On April 19, 1943, a secret telegram was transmitted to the highest intelligence agency of the Japanese side. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, Commander-in-Chief of the Combined Fleet, had encountered enemy fire while commanding fleet operations on the front line that month and died heroically in the air. Yamamoto's death caused a sensation as the Japanese military did not believe that their revered war hero would die in an attack rather than in battle over the Pacific. In this issue, we will delve into the planner and executor of the Pacific War, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, who was hailed as the flower of the Navy in Japan. The name Isoroku Yamamoto is not unfamiliar to China. During the early stages of the Pacific War, this Japanese naval commander had deterred the United States Navy. Along with Hideki Tojo and Kenji Doihara, he was one of the infamous fascist reactionaries of World War II. However, Yamamoto did not await a humanitarian trial by the International Criminal Court for War Criminals. He met his fate on the road to the afterlife before Tojo and Doihara. Yamamoto Isoroku, originally named Isoroku Takano, was born in 1884 in the feudal samurai family of Nagao Village, Nishigata County, northern Honshu, Japan. His father, Masayoshi Takano, was a poor teacher who was already 56 years old at the time, and he named his son Isoroku Takano. In 1913, Isoroku Yamamoto's parents passed away one after another, and Isoroku was sent to his mother's family. In 1916, he changed his surname to Yamamoto for the sake of raising his grandson. In this issue, as we explore the character of Isoroku Yamamoto, I searched online for many anecdotes and stories about him, striving to present a true portrayal of Yamamoto. One particularly interesting story left a deep impression on me. In 1921, the 20-year-old Japanese Crown Prince Hirohito, escorted by the Japanese Navy fleet, visited Europe. Isoroku Yamamoto accompanied him. Although Hirohito had not yet ascended the throne, he already showed strong political ambition, mainly because he wanted to study the British constitutional monarchy. Hirohito believed that Britain's military defense work after World War I was worth learning from, so he stayed in Europe for a long time. At that time, Hirohito was the first Japanese crown prince to visit Europe. He was warmly welcomed by various countries with grand ceremonies. Prime Minister Winston Churchill and King George V attended the reception. During a banquet, there was an interesting episode that caught Churchill's attention and led him to say, "This person may achieve great things in the future." The person in question was the later famous Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto. At the banquet, to show respect for Crown Prince Hirohito, Yamamoto specially ordered a famous English steak. The steak was made from the finest Aberdeen Angus beef, carefully raised on the estates of the British royal family, and cooked by a renowned chef. When Hirohito cut into the steak, blood flowed out as it was cooked medium rare. Medium rare steak was popular in Europe, but few people in Asia had the opportunity to enjoy it. Although Japan often ate sashimi and raw fish, the sight of the juicy, reddish steak made Hirohito hesitate. He tried to endure his nausea and reluctantly took a few bites before setting down his knife and fork without finishing it. King George V, unaware of the reason behind Hirohito's actions, asked if it was delicious and encouraged him to enjoy it. Hirohito. Eating to disgust oneself, refusing to eat is a blatant lack of respect for the other party. At that moment, Hirohito hesitated, and a pair of eyes were fixed on the actions at the table. The person was Isoroku Yamamoto. Yamamoto, without time to chew, quickly swallowed the steak on his plate and walked to Hirohito's side, saying to the imperial consort, "Your Majesty, the steak is absolutely delicious. I haven't eaten enough. Could you reward me with it?" Hirohito pretended to decline, expressing apologies to the king for Yamamoto's rudeness, but in reality, he was delighted. He gave Yamamoto the steak from his plate. However, this scene was observed by Churchill. Through Yamamoto's actions, Churchill sensed many issues and realized that both Yamamoto and Hirohito were warmongers. They went to Europe to study the developments after World War I, ostensibly to learn humbly, but secretly plotting conspiracies. This was exactly what Churchill was concerned about. As expected, after this visit to Europe, Yamamoto was promoted to Major General. In 1929, he was granted the title of Lieutenant General. In 1933, Yamamoto became the Commander-in-Chief of the Japanese First Air Fleet. From then on, he climbed the ranks swiftly. Yamamoto was his renowned name, but he also had a nickname, 80 cents. Why was he called 80 cents? It started with a battle. He was wounded in the Russo-Japanese War, with his left index and middle fingers blown off by a shell. He became a disabled person with only 8 fingers. As for the name Yamamoto, he was quite a playboy and often frequented places of entertainment. In Japan at that time, geishas provided the fashionable service of trimming men's nails. However, this advanced and meticulous service was priced according to the number of fingers. 1 cent per finger for a normal person would be 10 cents for 10 fingers. But Yamamoto had only 8 fingers. If you gave him 10 cents, he would have to give you back 2 cents in change. Over time, Yamamoto acquired the mocking nickname 80 cents. As time went by, military officers around him began calling him by this name privately. Yamamoto himself didn't mind. Yamamoto not only had a strong penchant for women but was also addicted to gambling. When it came to gambling skills, the Japanese military was unrivaled at the time. He frequently gambled with his subordinates, friends, relatives, and even geishas. They played various games such as poker, bridge, go, and made bets. It was said that his gambling skills were excellent. During his time in the United States, he often visited various casinos and usually returned with full pockets. He was the second Japanese person to be refused entry into a Moroccan casino due to his exceptional gambling skills. The first was a genius who could accurately calculate roulette numbers. Due to his absolute confidence in his gambling skills, Yamamoto once boasted publicly that if Emperor Hirohito gave him permission to gamble full-time, within a year, he could win back an entire fleet for Japan at the gambling table. You might think that with Yamamoto's reputation for always winning, his gambling partners would be unwilling to play with him. However, you would be mistaken. Although he was addicted to gambling, he never cared about winning or losing. Chess, go, mahjong, baseball, and roulette were all tools he used to gamble with others. Sometimes when he couldn't find gambling equipment, he would play simple paper horse racing games with young people or beautiful geishas. He would place a bet of 50 cents on these games and deliberately losing to them to provoke a laugh, at the same time satisfying his own gambling addiction. Yamamoto believed that gambling, when encountering a certain issue, is a game where each side bets on their own opinions or actions, taking responsibility for oneself. This can be said to be Yamamoto's invented theory of gambling. The battlefield was Yamamoto's true casino. Yamamoto Isoroku, the reckless gambler, successfully staged an air raid. In that era, the small country of Japan actually planned to attack Pearl Harbor. This behavior, for everyone, had an unquestionable outcome: suicide. The chances of success were extremely low. However, Yamamoto Isoroku himself had the mentality of a gambler and adventurer. He was determined to make a big move, carefully planning his strategies, keeping the Americans completely unaware. As a result, the Japanese military achieved a complete victory in this surprise attack, at the cost of losing 29 aircraft, sinking 5 U.S. battleships, and hundreds of other ships and planes. This battle dealt a heavy blow to the strength of the U.S. Navy, and the attack on Pearl Harbor became the first successful large-scale use of naval aviation in the history of warfare. An example of implementing a sudden attack. When news of the successful surprise attack arrived, Yamamoto Isoroku kept his mouth shut, wearing a proud smile on his face. The second time, he wasn't so lucky. Yamamoto Isoroku wanted to replicate the glory of the Pearl Harbor attack by engaging the U.S. Navy in a decisive battle at Midway Island through a surprise attack. Unfortunately, this time the plan was intercepted and deciphered by the U.S. military. They turned the tables on Yamamoto by quietly deploying forces at Midway Island and patiently waiting for the arrival of the Japanese fleet. The result was evident. On April 13, 1943, the U.S. intercepted a telegram sent by the Japanese Combined Fleet Headquarters to the commanding officers of various units in the Solomon Islands. The telegram stated that on April 18, at 8 a.m., the Chief of the General Staff would depart from Rabaul, riding on 2 Type 1 land attack aircraft, protected by 60 fighter aircraft, and inspect Bougainville Island, Shortland Island, and Ben Base. the squadron would land at 9:45 at Bougainville Island Airport. Then travel by submarine to arrive at Shortland Base at 10:45 in the morning. And depart for Bin at 4 p.m. Returning to Rabaul at 5:40 in the afternoon. If the weather was unfavorable, the schedule would be delayed by a day. The chief of the general staff mentioned in the telegram was none other than Yamamoto Isoroku. When the information spread, the U.S. High Command quickly initiated a series of discussions and conducted research on hunting down and launching an air raid. Yamamoto Isoroku subsequently issued the order to Pacific Fleet Commander Nimitz. On April 18, Yamamoto Isoroku, along with his Chief of Staff and Rear Admiral Ogaki, split into two planes and took off from Rabaul Airport escorted by 6 fighter aircraft, with the intention of landing on Bougainville Island. When Yamamoto's plane was about to land over Bougainville Island, 16 American aircraft flying from Guadalcanal quickly shot down both planes, while the escorting fighters were momentarily absent. Thus, the legendary general Yamamoto Isoroku met his end. To stabilize the morale of the front-line troops, the Japanese side only announced this news a month later, and posthumously awarded Yamamoto Isoroku the rank of Daijensui and Marshal, which demonstrated the significance of Yamamoto Isoroku's position in the hearts of the Japanese people. Setting aside political perspectives, reviewing the life of Yamamoto Isoroku, a warmonger. From an early age, he was influenced by the spirit of Bushido. Received military training from a young age. Entered the Naval Academy at Adajima. Studied abroad in the United States. And served as the commander of the 1st Carrier Division and military attaché to the U.S. He played an important role in the development of aircraft carriers and carrier-based aircraft in the Japanese Navy. Opposed Japan's aggression in the Pacific, but succumbed to the immense pressure from the right-wing forces in Japan, and the pressure from the Japanese High Command, ultimately launching the Pacific War. He was a military deity of Japan, a nightmare for the U.S. military in the Pacific, and, driven by fanatical fascist ideology, he personally buried the carefully cultivated Japanese Navy in the ocean.